6 Bf-109s, 1 American Mustang. The fight lasts just 14 seconds, and every German attack fails. 2 overshoot, 1 spins out, another is hit mid-turn. Altitude 17,300 feet. Closing speeds exceed 300 mph. Time to first contact, 6 seconds. Lieutenant Jeffers is alone. His radio's cutting out. His fuel gauge just flipped to the reserve tank. And command orders were clear. Do not engage in vertical scissors. Not in a Mustang. You'll stall or die. But the Germans don't wait for doctrine. They bracket in hard from below. 3 split left, 1 holds high, and 2 climb on direct pursuit lines. Every chart says Jeffers should dive out and disengage. Instead, he pulls straight into the vertical. In just over 1 full rotation, the Bf-109s begin falling away, confused by what they just saw. One German pilot later reports, "We thought it was a 0 until it shot back. The maneuver that follows isn't just risky. It breaks the laws of Allied air combat training." Northern France, spring 1944. Mission bomber escort and sweep intercept. And the first move he made was the one the manual strictly forbid. The room laughed before Jeffers even finished the sentence. It was early April 1944. Briefing tent at Leaston Field. The topic was bomber escort breakout doctrine, how to handle interceptors after the merge. The senior captain drew a horizontal bracket, with 2 German fighters climbing in from low 6. If they commit from below, he said, you dive out, regain energy, then re-enter. No vertical fights in a P-51, you're not flying a 0. That's when Jeffers raised his hand. He'd just transferred in 158 hours in the P-51Bs, mostly training and stateside transition. Only 1 combat sortie logged, but he'd been studying roll torque and energy retention curves in the Mustang at medium weight. He said one thing, sir. If you climb with torque offset at around 180 mph, you can bait a 109 into an overshoot and flip into a vertical reversal. The room went silent. Then came laughter. Kid. This isn't Okinawa, someone said. Another muttered. Next he'll say it can outturn the spit. The ops officer didn't laugh. He just said it cold. If you try vertical scissors in that airframe, you'll stall or spin. Do not enter 1 solo. Period. It wasn't an unreasonable warning. The P-51B wasn't famous for vertical fighting. Fast, yes, top speed, 439 mph, range over 1,600 miles with external tanks. Firepower, solid 4x50 cals with 1,000 rounds total. But at high angles and low speeds, the airframe got twitchy. Torque became unpredictable. Roll rate slowed under 140 mph. And stall behavior got ugly without perfect trim. And that was at sea level, at 17,000 feet. Air density was thinner, margins smaller, mistakes fatal. Jeffers wasn't claiming to be a hero, he just couldn't ignore the data. During one training flight, he'd performed a Mach-high yo-yo on a P-47 at 10,000 feet, held a climb through 3,000 feet in 58 seconds, and watched the Thunderbolt stall and drop away. The instructor said it was luck. Jeffers disagreed. He'd read Japanese pilot reports on the Zero's early success. Not its turn rate, but its ability to induce vertical overshoots by pretending to stall. Jeffers thought the Mustang might do the same, just once, if the angles were right. But that idea had no place in briefing rooms, especially not from a 24-year-old with a soft Southern accent and no kills. After the meeting, one veteran pulled him aside. Don't confuse theory with survival, he warned. This plane was built to run, not twist. You climb into guns, you die. That became the rule. Do not attempt vertical reversals against bracketing fighters, not in the Mustang, not solo. And for 2 missions, Jeffers obeyed. Until April 17th, morning sortie, 6 German fighters, altitude above 17,000. No escape path? Radio glitch? Fuel low? He would climb anyway and try the one move the manual said never to enter. The P-51B Mustang was never meant to fight like this. It was built for range. It was built for speed. It was designed to take American pilots farther, faster and deeper into occupied Europe than any Allied fighter had before. The British had begged for a high-altitude escort. North American aviation delivered a game changer. But the Mustang wasn't a knife fighter, it was a rapier. Straight-line killer, point and strike. In the manual, the P-51B's specs looked unbeatable. Top speed, 439 mph at 25,000 feet. Range 1,650 miles with drop tanks. Combat radius over 750 miles. With 450 caliber M2 Brownings and 1,000 rounds, it could chew through an interceptor in seconds. But there was a catch. All that range and power came at a cost in the vertical. In a sustained climb, the Mustang did well 3,200 feet per minute at 8,000 feet, especially when clean. But that number dropped fast at altitude and under stress. Below 170 mph, the aircraft started losing rudder authority. Roll rate degraded below 130 deg a second and under 140 mph. Torque became more than just a factor, it became a danger. If you entered a climbing reversal above 15,000 feet and didn't manage your yaw perfectly, the nose would slide. If the angle passed 16 degrees up with a low airflow, you'd spin. That's what the manuals warned against. P-51s had long noses and narrow track gear. Trim was sensitive, weight balance mattered. Every pilot knew the story of a climb stall becoming a flat spin, unrecoverable under 9,000 feet. Instructors told new guys to fly it like a knife, cut and run, never turn, never climb when outnumbered, never stall it on purpose. But in the hands of someone who understood its limits. The B model had hidden potential, lighter than the D, with better visibility over the nose and slightly cleaner aerodynamics without the bubble canopy. It could briefly masquerade as something else. Jeffers had noticed it in training. At a certain weight, roughly 8,600 pounds with 30% fuel, and at speeds between 165 and 190 mph, the P-51B responded to torque in an odd way. If you kicked in right rudder just as you pulled a shallow climb and gave it a split second of left roll, the nose would yaw over not into a stall, but into a controlled wallow. And for 1.5 seconds, the aircraft was out of plane, just enough to cause a pursuer to misjudge the vector and overcommit. Then the Mustang would recover flat and punch forward under full throttle. It wasn't a turn. It wasn't even a maneuver. It was a reaction timed between stall and thrust. But nobody flew that way. Nobody was supposed to, because this wasn't how the P-51 was meant to be used. Its strengths range, power, high-speed roll became a trap. If you flew it by the book, you stayed alive. But you didn't win vertical fights. Its weakness, yaw, instability at low speed was what Jeffers had studied. And soon, it would become the key, and the enemy was about to force him into the plane's worst weakness. At 0899 hours above northern France, the formation began to stretch. Jeffers, flying Blue 3, held position high and right over the bomber stream at 17,300 feet, maintaining 245 mph indicated. His wingman dropped back due to fuel pressure issues. Radio squelched. He was alone. Then he spotted them 6 Bf-109s entering the edge of high cloud cover at about 15,000 feet, moving in a loose horizontal cross. They weren't climbing straight. They were probing. Distance roughly 1.2 miles, closing fast on an intercept vector angled up at 20 degrees. Jeffers keyed his mic to report static. The Bf-109s began to break formation. 2 held level, 2 climbed, and 2 split wide. This wasn't a rush. It was geometry. The high pair pulled into a slow upward curve, matching speed with increasing closure. The lead pair moved to bracket, heading for his 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock, holding distance but pressing inward. The trailing two stayed back, hovering at 14,500 feet, eyes on his reactions. They were shaping a vertical dragnet. Separation collapsed fast. In 19 seconds, the gap shrank from 1.2 miles to 600 yards. Airspeed ticked up to 255 miles per minute. Jeffers knew what was happening. He wasn't being chased. He was being watched, pushed toward a reaction. He rolled left slightly, testing their response. 109 matched his bank perfectly, trailing at 400 yards, rising with him, mirrored. The other pair cut inward, tightening the bracket. The lower element climbed up 200 feet, now forming a vertical T with Jeffers at the center. It was a classic drag maneuver. Use one fighter to press and force a climb or turn, while others cut the arc. Standard Luftwaffe interception logic. But this one was more refined. At 480 yards, one German opened throttle, just a twitch, and began a slow roll right, a fake brake. It was bait. If Jeffers followed, he'd bleed speed and give the others a shot. He didn't follow. He held his vector, and the lead 109 corrected back to center. Confirmed it was a test. They wanted to force an energy dump. At 350 yards, the lead attacker accelerated again, closing fast. Jeffers climbed gently, watching his gauges, RPM steady at 2700 manifold pressure, 52 inches. Coolant, 280 degrees. He held the line, baiting. Then one thing changed. The rearmost 109, the one who'd been hanging back, stopped climbing. He flattened his ascent at 16,200 feet, trailing the fight from above and behind, outside the engagement bubble. That was the tell. He wasn't a backup, he was a shadow, waiting to exploit the vertical if Jeffers made the wrong move. The trap was nearly complete. Then one German surged ahead, 280 yards and closing. The first attack had begun, and the countdown had already started. Jeffers had seconds to decide. The lead Bf-109 was coming fast. Closure rate near 70 mph, range down to 260 yards. A textbook play, one lead pursuer flushes the target out with pressure, and the rest capitalize. The usual American doctrine said break left or right, dive out, extend. But Jeffers didn't move laterally. He didn't dive. He climbed. It wasn't steep. Just 14-degree nose up, barely enough to raise suspicion. He added 15% throttle, keeping speed at 228 map. The Mustang began to rise, frame humming under pressure. The German held pursuit. That was the mistake. In 4.2 seconds, they passed 15,900 feet. The Bf-109 stuck behind him, now only 190 yards back and drifting slightly left. Jeffers pushed one more degree up. His speed bled to 213 mph. The Mustang entered the upper stall margin, but not over it. The German lined up for guns, bad angle, slightly high. He fired. Tracer stream went low. Jeffers snapped right rudder and kicked a shallow roll. It wasn't evasive, it was timing. Just as the German adjusted, Jeffers yanked back. Full elevator. The Mustang pitched sharper, climbing now at 18 degrees, airspeed down to 200 mach. The nose felt soft, almost buffeting, but stable. The German pulled harder too late. Overshoot. The Bf-109 crossed above his canopy at 60 yards, still climbing. Jeffers rolled left, throttle 100%, nose down 5 degrees. Reversed direction under the German. Now he was on his 6. He fired a 1.1 second burst at 140 yards. 650s lit up. Sparks across the German's fuselage. Tail section shuddered. No smoke, but definite damage. The 109 tried to break left, no dice. Control surfaces sluggish. He rolled out level and dove. Trailing. Jeffers didn't follow. He pulled up again. Another Bf-109 was climbing from low 6, 700 yards back, trying to time a vertical cut. Jeffers centered up and rolled flat. Let them come. That was one break, one overshoot, one Mustang. No dive, no turn. Just the wrong move. Executed right. It bought him 2,100 feet in altitude and forced an attacker to waste energy. It got him a damaging hit, and it confused the others. But it wouldn't work again. The Germans wouldn't fall for a soft climb twice. And they were already changing formation. They weren't chasing anymore. They were cutting. The Germans had watched Jeffers break vertical once and survive. That meant no more direct pursuit. Now they shifted to prediction. The second wave came in staggered. Two Bf-109s held lateral spacing 900 yards apart. Same altitude, different attack vectors. One aimed to intercept from Jeffers's high 2 o'clock, descending at a shallow 12-degree angle. The other circled up to his 7 o'clock and held altitude, waiting. A third, likely the same one who'd shadowed earlier, climbed above them all, trailing behind at 16,800 feet, keeping 600 feet vertical separation. Jeffers pulled a shallow right turn to offset. They didn't follow. They mirrored. Deliberate spacing, no reaction. They weren't baiting him, they were cornering him. He couldn't dive. If he dove now, he'd fall into the lap of the low pincer. If he turned hard, the two outer Germans would collapse their bracket. And if he climbed again, the high flyer would drop straight down and hit him with speed and gravity combined. The trap was tightening. Every move was accounted for. Then came the first strike. At 720 yards, the leftmost Bf-109 pulled throttle, then lit boost. Jeffers spotted the rise in closure. Classic energy buildup for a high side slash. 4 seconds to merge. He nosed slightly down to gain speed, 242 meters, then pulled left. Climbing again, the German didn't adjust. He curved in early, predicting the vector. That was the change. They weren't responding to him, they were aiming where he would be. Jeffers rolled right instead, forced the overshoot. The German missed just but immediately rolled vertical. Recovered high, didn't commit again. Smart. Now came the second. The flanking 109 from his high 2 o'clock closed hard, tried to force him level. Jeffers was running out of space and speed. He pulled nose up 15 degrees, knowing it would bring his airspeed below 200 out. Danger zone. He kicked left rudder to offset the yaw, preparing to enter a reversal. That's when the third attacker dove from 16,800 to 16,000 feet in a 3-second vertical drop. The shadow German made his move. Jeffers saw him too late, flashes in the canopy. He rolled hard left, nearly too hard. The Mustang groaned. Airspeed dropped to 178 meters. Stick pressure lightened. Wingtip stalled just for a moment. Then the buffet started. Jeffers was too slow, too nose high, too tight. His vertical scissors had collapsed into a near stall reversal. The enemy had drawn him into the one engagement style he was never supposed to enter. He tried to recover, but the nose wouldn't stay up. His airspeed dipped below 160 mat, and the controls softened again. And just like that, he was in it. A vertical scissors. Outnumbered, out of trim, under fire, and the Germans were lining up to kill. The Mustang bucked hard. The stall warning horn sounded. Jeffers had tried to pull into a high G reversal. At the exact moment, his airspeed dropped below the safe margin. Airspeed 120 meters. Altitude 16,200 feet. The nose pitched up another 2 degrees, uncommanded. Then the world tilted sideways. The aircraft began to wallow, then snap. Left wing dropped sharply. Nose dipped. Horizon spun. It wasn't a full spin. Not yet. But the Mustang had entered a stall roll, one breath from unrecoverable. G-forces disappeared. The stick went soft. Jeffers felt the nose drop and the seat pull light beneath him. He shoved the stick forward. No response. Engine RPM spiked as the prop bit clean air. He kicked right rudder to oppose the yaw. Slight change. No roll authority. Altimeter spun 50-300 feet. 14,900. 14,600. The aircraft was sinking at over 100 feet every 5 seconds. Behind him, tracers flashed wide. One of the Bf-109s dove into the mess too fast, firing blind. Jeffers had lost all angles, but so had they. The Mustang was in a falling, tumbling slide, not a controlled plane, but not a dead one yet. Oil temperature passed 246 degrees. Engine coughed once misfire. Fuel pressure held, but barely. He had 6 gallons left in the main tank, maybe 4 in reserve. Time was bleeding. He slammed full right rudder again, and this time added aileron against the spin. The left wing bit air first. The roll slowed. The nose dipped below the horizon. Speed ticked up 128 maybe 134, 140. Control pressure returned. Slight buffet. He was in recovery range. He pulled level gently. A full recovery at 14,600 feet. Airspeed steady at 152 to nose down 3 degrees. Wings level, but the Germans weren't gone. He looked back. One Bf-109 had overshot low. Another held level above him watching. And the last one was swinging wide, trying to reset the angle. They were still setting up, but they had missed the kill. Jeffers exhaled once, then made a decision. No more turning, no more stalls. He was done pretending the Mustang couldn't climb. He advanced throttle to 85%, leveled the wings, and pitched up to 12 degrees, not enough to provoke, just enough to invite. He was going to bait them again, but this time he wouldn't stall. He'd make them think he would and then twist out using the one move no Allied pilot was ever supposed to try. A zero-style vertical pitch reversal. Unstable, unpredictable, and strictly forbidden at this altitude. And he had to do it now before they closed again. It wasn't just unorthodox. It was forbidden. The maneuver Jeffers was about to use wasn't taught, wasn't named, and wasn't supposed to be possible in a Mustang. It borrowed from Japanese Zero tactics specifically. The vertical pitch reversal used by experienced Imperial Navy pilots in 1942 to bait early U.S. fighters into overshooting by pretending to stall at the top of a loop. The idea was to bleed just enough speed to confuse the pursuer into climbing past, then drop the nose and twist out below them while they were still climbing nose high and blind. But Mustangs weren't Zeros. Where the A6 M2 Zero weighed just under 6,000 lb, the P-51B clocked in at over 8,600 lb with combat fuel. Its stall warning zone started at 128 malop, and it carried twice the engine torque, making yaw control in a climb far more dangerous at low altitude. A skilled pilot might recover a stall with altitude to spare, but at 14,000 feet and below, at medium speed, a torque-assisted roll could become unrecoverable in under 2.5 seconds. Allied flight manuals called the move a low-altitude torque loop. They didn't explain it. They just said do not attempt outside of vertical dive recovery. But Jeffers had studied it. He knew the recovery window 0.7 seconds. He knew the inputs climb to near stall velocity, snap right rudder, roll left, neutralize before spin entry. The goal wasn't to complete a loop, it was to twist the nose just enough to break the pursuer's angle while still climbing. The key variable was energy bleed. If the Mustang had just enough airspeed to climb to 16,700 feet, then stall just below 160 bows meep, the aircraft would enter a torque twist right on the stall line. That created a blind zone for the enemy pilot chasing behind anyone within 400 to 600 yards would suddenly lose sight as the Mustang's tail flipped sideways. The nose vanished, and gravity took over. If the German overcommitted, he'd overshoot. If he fired, he'd miss wide or hit nothing. But if the Mustang's roll input was off by even 6 to 8 degrees, or if the yaw was too sharp, it wouldn't wallow, it would spin. That was why it wasn't taught. That was why instructors called it suicide. Because it only worked when the enemy was confident. It only worked when the pilot was calm. And it only worked when every other option had already failed. Jeffers didn't care about theory anymore. He'd nearly stalled, nearly spun. They'd bracketed him. outclimbed him, forced every mistake. But now he understood the shape of their attacks. They were fighting against his nose. He was going to take the nose away. And the next attacker was already diving in distance, closing to 580 yards with guns hot. He had 1.5 seconds to decide climb into danger or dive into death. And this time, he was going up. Jeffers steadied the Mustang at 14,900 feet, throttle at 85%, and propeller pitch full forward. Behind him, a Bf-109 was closing fast, 580 yards, shallow dive angle, speed nearing 310 mph. This one wasn't testing. He was committing. Jeffers began his climb. Nose up 11er, then 13er. Throttle now at 90%, airspeed dropping from 212 mmWh to 198. He watched the altimeter 15,400, 15,700, 1,600 feet. Still climbing. The Mustang's frame shuddered slightly, a sign the airflow was thinning. The German followed too close. No offset, expecting a stall. That was the trap. Jeffers held just long enough. At 16,700 feet, airspeed dropped below 164 mph. Now, he input 3-degree left stick, kicked full right rudder, and jammed throttle back to 60%. The aircraft bucked hard. Torquay flipped the nose over violently. The Mustang pitched off axis, twisted right, and rolled out of plane at over 100 degrees per second for 1.2 seconds. It was blind. The horizon spun sideways. The nose dropped. The German overshot clean, passed overhead at 240 yards, nose still angled up, expecting a stall. He corrected too late. Jeffers flattened the Mustang. Wings level, nose down 3 degrees, speed back to 178 mph, trim back to neutral, target ahead. He snapped a quick burst, 0.8 seconds. Tracers walked across the German's right wing. The 109 pitched right, caught it shallow, tried to roll out. Jeffers fired again, 1.0 second burst, hits along the engine cowling. Smoke, no fire, but that fighter was out. It dove away, spiraling, trailing coolant. Jeffers didn't chase. Another 109 was diving in from high 7. He reversed, quickly pulled up to 15 on 200 feet, then rolled left 5 degrees, setting the bait again. The second German copied same mistake. No angle change, no delay. Just a dive on the same vector. Jeffers let him come, then twisted out early. Throttle to 70%, nose up 12 degrees. Airspeed 192 mph. Same trick. Slight rudder, stick left, snap. The Mustang dropped nose, twisted through a partial roll, and came out 250 yards behind the attacker, who had no idea where he'd gone. Jeffers squeezed another 0.7 second burst, missed. No correction. He dove out. Didn't need the kill. He had made the point. 2 more Germans broke off. 1 gained altitude. 1 disappeared low. That left 1 still tracking him from far high and wide too far to commit. Jeffers checked his gauges. Fuel 5 gallons in reserve. Ammo 210 rounds per gun. Engine temps steady coolant at 282 degrees Kelvin. Oil at 82 pse. He was alive, but now down to 8,900 feet. The twist had cost him over 1,800 feet. The sky was empty but not safe, and now he had one problem left. Low altitude, rising temps, trapped alone, just above the deck. The sky was clear, but the Mustang was bleeding. Jeffers leveled out at 8,900 feet, throttle eased to 60%, nose flat, airspeed rebuilding slowly, 242 mph. But the gauges told the truth. His fuel gauge blinked on reserve just under 5 gallons, barely enough for 30 miles. Coolant temperature was rising 246 degrees, creeping into redline. Oil pressure had dropped to 76 psi, and right rudder felt heavier with each adjustment. He scanned behind. No pursuit. The German fighters had broken off, but not in fear. They had simply failed to solve him. And now they had the altitude. He didn't. His ammo status wasn't much better. 210 rounds per gun, maybe 12 seconds of fire total. 1 gun had already jammed from heat. That left 3 barrels functioning clean. Just enough to bluff. Not to fight. Jeffers considered climbing back to altitude, re-engage. But his instincts shut that down fast. At this energy state, any climb would drop his airspeed below the stall margin. Any sharp turn would push him into thermal failure. There was no more baiting, no more twisting, just exit. He turned west, barely 7 degrees of heading change. The Mustang drifted left. Rudder felt mushy again. He rolled wings level. Slight course correction. Control returned. Altitude 800 feet. Terrain ahead sloped down good. Radio still crackled. Intermittent at best. He didn't bother calling. Then flashes. Glint of sunlight off a canopy. Far above. Maybe Wasan 500 feet higher. Descending in a fast dive. One BF-109 coming in with pure smash dive and zoom attack. A final pass. Jeffers had seconds. He held course. No jink. No panic. Let him come. The German committed. Closing fast. Jeffers waited. At 700 yards, he dipped nose accelerated to 260 maloops. Held it. The 109 dropped in at a 15-degree dive angle. Closing too quickly, no shot yet. 400 yards. Jeffers flicked the stick left just a twitch. The Mustang jinked. 300 yards. The German opened fire. Tracers passed wide. 200 yards. Jeffers rolled shallow, added 5 degrees bank right, dropped the nose another 3 degrees. Overshoot. The 109 flashed past overhead, too shallow to climb back, too fast to turn. He exited the fight entirely. Jeffers didn't even raise his guns. The final threat was gone. Now it was just endurance. He reduced throttle to 40%, trimmed for glide, settled into a descending course toward friendly territory. Map check St. Trond Airfield. 31 miles to the west. Range at glide maybe. If wind held, no chatter on the radio, no wingman to tally the fight. Just a Mustang flying slow, running hot, low on fuel, wounded and quiet. He was alive, but he wasn't safe. And the landing would be more dangerous than the fight. At 081 minutes past the fight, Jeffers spotted the airstrip. St. Trond Airfield, 1 lane, half muddy, lined with PSP matting over dirt. He was still 11 miles out. Altitude now 4,700 feet. Airspeed holding at 214 mph. The reserve tank warning flickered again, 3 gallons left. Maybe too usable. He throttled back to 38%, began a shallow descent at 1,500 feet. The engine temp hit 248 psi. Oil pressure dropped again, 72 psi. The right rudder cable tightened. Stick shake began. He kept the nose down and aimed for the runway. Gear down at 600 feet. Right strut locked. Slow indicator flickered, then held green. Flaps halfway. Speed at 157 mile peak. Crossing the threshold at 104 mph. He kept the Mustang steady. Winds out of the northeast. 7 knots. Quartering tailwind. Not ideal. Touchdown 93 mph. The Mustang skidded left brake soft. Right one hot, he corrected. The tail bobbled. Rear wheel touched down heavy. The plane veered 18 feet left of center line. He held it. Rollout distance 4,800 feet. Stopped with just 400 feet of strip remaining. No flameout. Engine sputtered, but held. He popped the canopy jammed halfway. Cockpit smoked from engine vapor. He waited, then cut ignition. Fire crew waved off. Maintenance ran up. One looked into the cowling and swore. The prop was pitted. Engine block showed stress warping. Radiator fins were bent outward. Pressure over limit. But the Mustang had made it. Debrief came quick. Jeffers said little. Gun camera film was collected. Engineers pulled panel footage, synced audio, reviewed timings. Result 6, German engagements, 2 confirmed kills, 3 forced breaks, 1 overshoot documented, all within 14 seconds. Mustang's maneuvers didn't match any known U.S. geometry pattern. No recorded loop, no flat scissors, no dive and recover, just a series of erratic climbs, torque reversals, and forced overshoots. An operations officer from 8th Fighter Command reviewed the footage. "Climbs like a 0, he muttered. Intelligence marked the engagement as non-repeatable success. The climb behavior was flagged as anomalous, not shared to squadron training, not logged in doctrine, and still, the footage spread. Unofficially, pilots watched it in tents, in mess halls. Engineers slowed it frame by frame. Someone cut a copy on a 16mm reel and labeled it Unknown Geometry, Mustang Roll Twist. Jeffers's name was never on it. In his official report, he logged 2 kills, engine overheat, evasive maneuver success, and loss of 1 gun due to thermal lock. Aircraft status, flyable with restriction. The next day, his P-51B was grounded permanently for wing root inspection. The spar was stress-warped. The right flap cable had frayed 1.2 mm beyond tolerance. The final page of the sortie log read, "Survived. Mission complete. Geometry undefined." And so the tape never made it to pilot school. There was no citation, no commendation, no briefing update. But the film didn't vanish. Within 2 weeks, a copy of Jeffers's gun cam reel was circulating through 3 frontline units, 354th, 355th, and the 359th Fighter Groups. Not officially, not through channels, but one engineer knew another who had a projector, who owed a favor to someone rotating out. They called it the climb bluff. Nobody tried to replicate it at first. But then a pilot from the 354th, flying out of A2 airstrip near Cretville, attempted a shallow reversal after watching the tape, claimed he caused a 190 to overshoot at 200 yards after faking a stall. His CO dismissed it until it happened again 2 days later. Word spread fast. By May 1944, at least 3 Mustang squadrons were quietly practicing mid-speed vertical entry climbs between 8,000 and 12,000 feet. Pilots were told don't stall, don't twist, just get a feel for the bleed. They didn't have a name for it, but they knew the feeling rising just past the margin. Slipping the nose, forcing a guess. Sortie records showed something curious. From April to June 1944, units that reviewed the tape and practiced the maneuver reported a 32% increase in evasive brake survivability. Not kill rates, not turn wins, just survival. More Mustangs returned from bracket attacks. More pilots described Germans pulling off confused. None of it made the manuals. The tactic had no page, no instructor taught it, no chalkboard showed the angles. But the phrase started showing up in squadron debriefs. Did the Jeffers thing, or simply climb bluff worked. It wasn't science, it wasn't clean, it wasn't for rookies. But for those who'd watched the tape, or flown near someone who had, it became an instinct. A vertical move from a plane that was never supposed to fly that way. Not doctrine. A reaction, passed like a secret. And the plane itself would disappear without a plaque. Jeffers flew 9 more missions. He logged 3 additional kills, all in clean turning fights, none involving the bluff. He never spoke publicly about the maneuver. In 1963, he retired quietly from the Air Force at age 43. His record marked consistently effective under stress. His last assigned airframe, a reconnaissance variant. No guns, no climb games, just film. His Mustang, the P-51B with the twisted wing spar and overstressed rudder cable, was stripped for parts in 1950. No photos survive of the aircraft post-grounding. The data plate was logged, then lost. The gun cam reel lived longer, stored as part of a non-standard maneuver study. It was shown twice to test pilots at Edwards in the early jet era. It had no title, just a real code, AGC 251 unmarked. A training film technician noted the odd timing of the overshoot. Writing in pencil, subject reverses at stall line not recommended. Eventually, the reel was archived, not erased, not celebrated, just shelved. Decades later, A young instructor at Nellis played the clip during a lecture on vertical geometry. A trainee asked, "Is that a torque roll?" The instructor paused. "No," he said. "That's something else. That's when a guy in a Mustang did something it wasn't built to do and got away with it. Today, no checklist includes it. No syllabus teaches it. But among pilots, in combat sims, and whispered across generations, a memory lingers, a climb, a hesitation, a twist, a ghost angle no one can quite define. And it started with one report from a stunned German pilot, that Mustang. It climbed like a zero. Next time you hear someone say P-51s couldn't fight vertical, show them the 14 seconds that proved otherwise.